Hi and welcome everyone, Friar Tuck here. This is my epoch. Okay, so what we're going to be talking about today is the cost of living and its impact on homelessness, and how the housing market is impacting homelessness, how the job market is impacting homelessness, and kind of, is this by design? Is this are there other factors that are playing a role in this? These are going to be the questions that we're going to be answering today, and as part of tools that I'm using to help me, I have some quotes here from some articles I've been reading to kind of help me drive the point home. So the first thing is you can't afford a place without a job. Now you can get someone to pay your rent, but for how long will they pay your rent? If you can go out there and earn your own income, well, then you can go and afford rent. Well, there is something that's been happening within the employment market. Some of these things I actually have just recently learned that I was not fully aware of kind of like the place of the American worker. And although this has nothing to do with immigration as far as the topic today, immigration is going to be a big part of this because it is what affects the domestic born workers' wages. Okay, so let me read a couple of quotes here. So in the year following the official end of the Great Recession in June 2009, foreign-born workers gained 656,000 jobs, while native-born workers lost 1.2 million, according to a new analysis of the U.S. Census Bureau and the Department of Labor, data by Pew Hispanic Center, a project of the Pew Research Center. So they did a survey and they found out that foreign-born workers are having an effect, or at least they're getting more jobs than you and me. And there's going to be some specific reasons that we're going to be talking about that have led to this. But the question we should be asking is, what impact does immigration have, not only on the U.S. economy but on workers as well? The size and growth rate of the economy is dependent upon the workers, the productivity, and supply and demand. As far as the more people that are at work, the higher the demand is. So therefore, it's a self-perpetuating cycle. Okay, so the common presumption is that skilled domestic workers are complements for immigrants, so that an increase in the number of immigrants will raise the wages of the domestic skilled labor. See what is happening here. So our elites, at least in the corporate world, they look at you and me as domestic workers, for domestic-born, natural-born workers, as the second-class workers, because what they want is they want the people coming across the border because they'll be grateful for their job, they'll work hard for their work, and they will work for less wages, which therefore directly affects wages. Okay, because therefore, although immigration yields a positive net gain to domestic workers, that net gain is not spread equally. It harms workers who are substitutes for immigrants while benefiting workers who are complements to immigrants. So that means if you're an unskilled laborer, well, you're going to get paid less, and you're less sought after than these immigrants, just because you're not the preferred worker. And so therefore, the more the immigration happens, the more the unskilled worker has pressure put on them, so that they struggle to be able to not only find jobs but to be able to earn livable wages, because most economists believe that unskilled domestic workers are the substitutes, so their wages will fall, and skilled domestic workers are complements, so their wages will rise. So many people they get out of high school, they go get a job. Back in the 60s, you didn't even need a high school diploma. Now you need a high school diploma, and it would be good if you had a college degree. But the thing is most of the work in which we do is unskilled labor. Being a cashier, working at these retail stores, being in janitorial, landscaping, construction, stuff like that. Now, if you're doing skilled things like laying tile, doing specific things like programming and other things like that. Well, they're not, those are the skilled workers. And kind of the way that this is being looked at, if you look at how Rome ran its society, is that if you were a Roman citizen, you were a cut above everybody else, and everybody else was a second-class citizen to a Roman citizen. And therefore, because of their second-class nature, they were able to exploit those second-class citizens and usurp them either into serfdom or into indentured servitude in one form or fashion. And that's essentially what the United States and our economic policy is doing to not only the foreign-born worker, but to the native-born workers as well. Okay, so they say that a solution is, to decrease the supply of immigrants can only increase native wages if immigrants and natives are substitutes for another. In other words, if they compete for the same jobs. Well, the thing is once you take these unskilled workers, these immigrants, out of competition, now all of a sudden you can have wages go up, people can get paid more. But the thing is, we as Americans, we're very complacent. We have certain expectations from our job that most people in other countries aren't afforded. Certain luxuries that we get as Americans that nobody here really thinks about, that in another country they're like, you should just be lucky that you exist. Okay, and so there was actually a statistic put out by the U.S. Department of Treasury where they said for every 1% of immigration, 0.2% is lost in wages. So if you have 10% immigration, then what is happening is you are dropping wages by 2%. Okay, so it's going to have a direct correlation. So because you're oversaturating the market, because it's all about supply and demand. If there's an excess supply of low skill workers, well, then they don't have to pay you very much. Whereas when you take that excess supply out, then the local worker, the homegrown worker, is protected because there is only so much supply of local citizens that can actually do these things. Okay, now they are saying that if you were to, there are at least two further potential impacts of further restricted immigration. First is some occupations like tomato harvesters could be automated, such as they were in the late 1960s after the end of the Bracero Guest War visa program. Again, this is why we're moving into automation. Even your basic warehouse and manufacturing jobs are being automated. And automation would have a significant knock-on effect, but it would not raise wages if low-skilled native workers who are substantially with low-skilled immigrant workers. Second, certain types of laborers might drop out of the labor market altogether. Using the spatial variation show that low-skilled immigration increases the labor market participation of high-skilled women by allowing families more freedom to hire childcare or pay for other domestic tasks. An immigration decline would induce high-skilled women to leave the workforce as the cost of labor for such tasks would potentially rise. So really what they're saying is that if you were to take immigration away, we could go back to the single income earner. Immigration and the misrepresentation of immigration that has been done over the years has come to a point where it has affected the worker to where it is splitting up our families, is doing having all of these negative effects. Okay, but that's not all all the pressures on the unskilled laborer, because now they're automating things. You look at McDonald's and so on and so forth. Okay, you look at McDonald's and you need two people to run a restaurant, one to do drive-through and one to be able to keep filling the different machines and helping with the orders, because everything else is being done automated. So therefore the low skill worker is getting automated out, but not only by artificial intelligence, but by advanced robotics. And even the skilled labor, the skilled worker right now, so the writers and the marketers and people like that, they are also under attack. So the average worker, at least the way that our future is looking for the American worker, is that you're not really going to be able to have a job unless you come from a different country and you're willing to work for less and work harder. Okay, and that's going to have a very disruptive effect on the local population, because if native-born workers that are not skilled are not able to find some form of gainful employment, do you think that they can afford rent? Okay, and you may say go out there and get a skill, but look at what the IQ requirement is to be able to go to college. You need at least a 120 IQ to be able to complete a bachelor's degree. When I took my test to get into the military, I found out that my IQ was 115. If I would have taken the ASVAB again, I probably could have gotten 120. They would have sent me off to OCS, and I would have either become a warrant officer, or I would have gone the route of getting a college education and becoming an officer within the Marine Corps. So my life would have been much different if I just had 5 more points on my IQ. The average IQ of the American individual is somewhere around 85. Okay, so the capacity to be able to learn new skills, to be able to retain skills and things like that is much harder with the less capacity you have. The lower your IQ score is, your ability to comprehend and digest information. And if you lack those abilities, what skilled work can you do? Because it requires memorization, it requires a muscle memory, and a lot of other things that those with the lower IQ points may not necessarily be able to do, not because of lack of desire, but because of lack of ability. The poorest among us are also the ones who have the largest families, and there is a correlation to that. So we are breeding the uneducated, which is diluting the educated workforce. Okay, so I mean, these are different things to think about. Now, this is just the job market. Okay, when we're talking about cost of living, we haven't even gotten to the housing market and its direct effect. Okay, because the housing market is the number one contributing factor to homelessness. I'm going to read you a couple of quotes. Okay, so the first one is, a large body of academic research has consistently found that homelessness in an area is driven by housing costs, whether expressed in terms of rents, rent to income ratios, price to income ratios, or home prices. Further, changes in rents precipitate changes in rates of homelessness. Homelessness increases when rents rise by amounts that low-income households cannot afford. Similarly, interventions to address housing costs by providing housing directly or through subsidies have been effective in reducing homelessness. That makes sense if housing costs are the main driver of homelessness, but not if other reasons are to blame. Studies show that other factors have a much smaller impact on homelessness. Okay, that's the first one. The second one is, much of the research looks at the variation in homelessness among geographies and finds that housing costs explain far more of the difference in rates of homelessness than variables such as substance abuse disorder, mental health, weather, the strength of the social safety net, poverty, or economic conditions. Some vulnerabilities strongly influence which people are susceptible to homelessness, but research has repeatedly concluded that these factors play only a minor role in driving rates of homelessness compared to the role of housing costs. The last one that I'm going to quote for you here for a minute here before we sit back and we digest this. Throughout the United States, rents have reached all-time highs. Half of renters nationwide now spend at least 30% of their income on rent, and a quarter spend at least 50%. As recently as the 1970s, when rents as a share of income were far lower, homelessness was rare in the United States, and housing was often available in buildings where individuals would rent private rooms but share kitchens, bathrooms, and common spaces, commonly referred to as SROs. These low-cost units helped stave off homelessness because someone earning low wages or receiving disability benefits could usually afford to rent a private room. In decades since, zoning or building restrictions in most cities prevented more of these units from being developed, and city governments encouraged their conversion into other uses. So not only is public policy against the worker, but it's also against the housed. There are many reasons why we could say that housing prices are going up, but the main reason that housing prices are going up has to do with the fact that we allow investing into it. Okay, so I was listening to a seminar many years ago, and in that seminar, the individual was talking about the reason why he got into flipping houses was because Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, and everybody else in Congress, they all were investors, heavy investors into real estate. So those being the lawmakers would have it in their best interest to create laws that are going to benefit themselves, which therefore benefit the real estate market. Okay, but here's the thing: you're taking something that is somebody's basic existence and monetizing it. Okay, well, let's use a different thing, something in recent history. Okay, remember when they were talking about doing the carbon tax or the CO2 tax? Well, a friend of mine was going to go buy a large amount of acreage so that he could actually sell his carbon credits because he had so many trees on there, and it had a negative footprint. Okay, so therefore he could sell his extra credits. So essentially what the government was trying to do was to tax you on breathing air, and your ability to breathe air and the things that you were allowed to do was going to be directly tied to taxes. We as a society have fought back on that, and so therefore we have looked at it and said, you cannot tax our air that we breathe. This is something that is provided to us by the planet. Well, housing has the same ability. Yes, housing is going to cost in materials, okay? It's going to cost somebody to go build it. But if you're constantly driving the price of things up by creating scarcity, because instead of being able to make a house that is make enough houses to where everybody can own a house or be put into a house, we have allowed these investors to turn them into rentals to charge more than what you would be paying in a mortgage contract. Just imagine if you took investment, the ability to invest in real estate away, in the same way that they took the ability to use gold and silver, and until the 1970s, it was illegal to hold gold and silver because of House Joint Resolution 192 and our switch into legal tender. It wasn't until we got away from the gold standard that you were even able to hold it for investment purposes, because that was the rules that the government made. So let's say that they apply the same thing towards housing by not allowing people to invest in it. Now all those extra houses that are out there on the market will not only bring down housing prices and make it so it's affordable for everybody, and it will also give you the ability to house most individuals. Okay, you will be able to pay a lot less, which gives you more of a disposable income. And the housing issue itself with scarcity would cease to be a major factor, because builders will still be able to build, and they will be able to build fine, and they will be able to build so much and make so much profit. But instead of it being done to cover an investor, so that an investor can make more money off of a basic need that the average modern citizen needs, because we're expected to have a job, pay our bills, and have a roof over our head. Well, now you're profiting off of that in such a way for our basic necessities. Okay, look in nature. Does a bird have to pay rent to a tree? Does a squirrel have to pay rent? Does a bear have to pay rent? Do they perform a function or a service? Yes. Okay. But as part of your right to life in the modern society, this is something that I think that we are entitled to in so many ways, such as a third Bill of Rights. Because in the second Bill of Rights, you were entitled to health care, unemployment insurance, guarantees in case you lost your job that you could still support yourself and pay your bills. Okay, Medicaid, Medicare, retirement, all these different things that we have now. The second Bill of Rights, it took about 60 years to apply everything. Obamacare was the final piece of that. Okay, but once that was applied, now we consider those basic necessities, because as we evolve into the modern society, this is something that we that we definitely need. Now, talking not only about investing and how it is something that is causing the housing prices to go up. Now, that's causing the base housing prices to go up. Now, what is causing the overall inflation of the housing market right now, and what are the contributing factors? Okay, there are 5 contributing factors that are secondary contributing factors to what I just discussed. Okay, and so the first one is the impact of inflation on goods and services. You got to buy building materials to repair the dwellings. That the price of that is going up, and so therefore they pass that cost on to the end user. Okay, you've got construction delays. So 89% of respondents to the quarterly construction survey reported experiencing construction delays. The global supply chain is still grappling with issues and delays associated with the pandemic. 92% reported new construction deals had been repriced within the past 3 months, with price increases of up to 25%. Okay, and this is an article that it was a year old. I haven't found anything new talking about the housing prices. Also, another thing that is happening, and number 3, is demand for luxury. So what's happening with the pandemic and everybody working from home, not needing to be tied to an office, allowing more mobility? People are willing to pay more for their housing, and they want to get out of the city into the suburbs or into the exurbs. And so now you've got all these small communities that are starting to grow because they are more sought after. People want to get to a quieter place in nature, especially if they can afford it. So now in these small communities, the cost of living and the housing prices are going through the roof because there is so much demand, because people are trying to exit the cities. But it is playing a big part in the larger cities, because now it's relieving the stress there, so that now that they can housing prices aren't rising as much as in other areas. And not only that, they're able to keep their homeless rate low and reduce it, because the price of your place to live is directly correlated to whether or not your job will afford you enough money to be able to pay for that rent. Okay, so you've got demand for luxury. Okay, you've also got migration patterns. Again, people are so demand for rental housing is also rising in less populous states and rural communities where the cost of living remain low. Montana's population rose by 1.6% between July 2020 and 21, one of the highest growth rates in the country, and rents in the state's population centers, including Missoula and Bozeman, have risen by double-digit percentage since the start of the pandemic. Okay, and then you've also got rising interest rates. Okay, so in business, everything is on a revolving line of credit. I was even doing this with my business. Okay, so on a revolving line of credit, you have, you're paying an interest rate to borrow money. So you get paid on the 20th, but you've got to pay your employees on the 15th. So you send off your accounts receivable. The bank gives you a loan so that you can cover payroll, so that there's no disruption in payroll. And then you just pay an interest fee for using their service. Okay. And so when those fees go up, and any other fees go up as far as taking out loans, because that's pretty much how the commercial world works, is it's 100% in debt. That's why I ran my business on zero debt, because that was one of the things that I saw being an issue. But a lot of these large organizations, in order to sustain themselves, are running debt. So now their cost of borrowing money goes up, which means their cost of production goes up, which means the cost goes up for everything that happens. And so we're seeing these prices and we're not really understanding it, but with the interest rates going up, it is forcing everything else upward, on top of the changing migration patterns, demand for luxury, construction delays, and that essentially is what's causing inflation. Okay, so anyways, I know this was a long one, guys. I hope that you learned some stuff from this. I hope that this helped you understand the intricacies of how the housing market and the cost of living is directly correlated to the rise of homelessness. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comments. Everything else is down in the description. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and like. Leave me a comment. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.